impatience. He inherited 5 or 6 absolutely senior players in that dressing room who were big drinkers and who had this issue that if they didn't have a midweek game, they would finish training on a Tuesday and they would go drinking that evening and possibly into the early hours of Wednesday morning. They would stay drinking. It's hard to imagine now, but that was the culture. And at some point he reached a stage where he had to make a call. Now, the 2 vulnerable players in that for me were always going to be Paul and Norman Whiteside.
Whereas Paul, I don't think him and Alex could hit it off, if you like. There was a bit of a conflict between their personalities. Paul didn't want to listen, didn't want to be told what to do, and he didn't suck up to the manager, this, that and the other. But it was nothing to do with his ability, because Paul went on to Aston Villa and he won Player of the Year the next 6 years or something. He was absolutely fantastic.
And I accepted fully what Alex did in the end in saying, look, I've tried everything I can to get these players. I know they're good players, but you know, maybe some other team can get the better out of them, because I can't.
I mean, he was as good a player as you'd ever want to have playing for you. And Alec had him, and I was surprised when Alec let him go.
Well, the way I left Manchester United was, at first I was sent away to do a medical, and I was told in that medical that I would last for 2 seasons, and I would play something like probably even only half the games for both those seasons. And but if I left Manchester United, they would compensate me by playing a game in Ireland for me. And I thought that was not a bad offer, really, you know.
He was offered an insurance payout of 100,000 at the time, which would have effectively, of course, meant he couldn't play anymore. But this was, United would argue to this day that that was based on all their medical prognosis of what his knees could sustain.
I can remember it was a tough time for Paul, you know, around that particular time. And I think it wasn't so much he was looking to sell him. I think at the time, Ferguson and Manchester United more so were looking to ask Paul to finish his career.
Now, 100,000 at the time in 1989 is an awful lot of money. And for a guy of Paul's indiscipline, if you like, it took a huge amount of strength for him not to take the money and run, which, you know, thank God when you look back, would have been disastrous, because that kind of money wouldn't have lasted very long in Paul's pocket.
Then I went back and told Norman Whiteside, and I spoke to Brian Robson and Kevin. And Kevin said to me, in particular Kevin said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to play on. I says, you know, much as I feel that my knee is sore, I said, you know, I'm able to play soccer and I'm going to play as long as I can. And Kevin said, end of story. You know, well, if you think you can play, tell him you're not doing the deal. So I went back to Gordon Taylor. I said, I'm just not doing any deal, no matter what deal they put on the table now. I don't want to do it.
I think at that stage he wasn't ready for that, and I think certainly I would have said to him, listen, you know, you can still play on, you know, don't look to finish your career. I think they thought his career was over because of his knee problems. Brian
Robson was having a barbecue in his house, and he said, there's a phone call from you, it's Alex on the phone. He passed me the phone, he just said, just wants to talk to you quickly. He said, Graham Taylor's on the phone for you, he just wants to talk to you. Boom, the phone went dead. Graham Taylor then spoke to me, and that's when I went up to Villa.
And Ferguson would say in hindsight that Paul was right to kind of go and get second opinions and that. But at the time, there was definitely a feeling that if Paul was going to stay playing professional football, you're talking about 2 years, 3 years at the outset, that was all that they felt that was left. And it's incredible to think that he was still playing in the First Division at 37.
Well, I'd say there'd be a great deal of respect from Alex Ferguson towards Paul. But I think it's a difficult position, you know. If Ferguson can only do what he believes is right for the club, and there will be mistakes made. There are bound to be mistakes made. But maybe he felt, well, he couldn't give the time to Paul that Paul needed at that particular time. You know, he's busy with other players, and you know, you have to go on his overall record. You know, Paul, it happens. Paul went on and did terrifically well, but it didn't stop Manchester United from winning things as well. So, but I'd say there'd be a great deal of respect from Alex Ferguson towards Paul.
Graham Taylor says, we know what you can do on the football side of things, and we want you up here playing for us. And I was saying, oh my God, thank heavens, you know, he says, we'll do the money thing together. Me and you will sort that out. Doug doesn't have to be involved in that. Obviously, we have to go to him eventually, but we want you to play with us next season. And I said, that is fantastic.
Very quickly after joining Villa, his life went into absolute chaos. He made an attempt on his own life, and he was taken into the Priory under an assumed name. And it's incredible to think back that none of this came out at the time, but he always talks about Graham Taylor and the kindness of Taylor at the time, because Taylor must have been thinking, what have I done here? I've made an awful mistake here. You know, I've spent 400,000, which was a lot of money at the time, on a player who's an absolute disaster.
And and even over the years now, he's been such a godsend to me. I mean, even though he was only there the first year that I actually played, on and off, I've always been ringing him with problems or anything like that. He wasn't just a manager who wanted to get you to that club and then say, now you're out of my life sort of thing. Graham Taylor's been a friend of mine for an awful long time, and hopefully always will be.
Taylor would go and visit him regularly in the Priory, and he would also, he offered at one stage, Paul, to come and live with Graham and his wife, which I know Paul was very touched by, because you can pay lip service to a problem, but when you actually are willing to take that problem inside your own front door, it's an extraordinary thing to offer. And I think the great thing for Paul McGrath was he very quickly believed he had to pay Graham Taylor back for just being such a decent human being. And in Paul's first 4 seasons at Villa, now only one of them was under Graham Taylor, but he was Player of the Year, Supporters Player of the Year 4 seasons running. This is the player that Manchester United were signing off as a crock.
Yeah, Jim Walker, for me at Aston Villa, gave me 8 great seasons, and he was definitely the one that, you know, each season he'd go to the managers who either came in or were there for a couple of years and say, this is the way Paul trains. He doesn't train like the other players, and yet he will give you, you watch him on Saturdays and he'll give you, you know, he'll play for you on Saturdays if you let him train in this way. And that's the way it happened. It was great for him to have the bravery to go to each, and some of them were a bit sceptical, saying, you know, why shouldn't he train like all the other players? He's getting paid, you know. But Jim used to convince them, and thank God he did, because you know, my career lengthened because of it.
Like, I suppose being a Liverpool fan, you know, it's hard for me to like any Manc, you know. But you know, that shows how much how highly I regard Paul McGrath's skill. You know, that being a former Man United player, I still think he was phenomenal. You know, and I would support him through thick and thin. You know, I really would. You know, and I'm just hoping that he doesn't beat my golf round today. The footballer that people like me would probably have the most affinity would be Paul McGrath, just because he played with his heart, you know, and even through injuries, and you know, and even beside, I suppose, weaker centre halves and playing in World Cups, he made it look easy.
Okay.
I was married twice. I was married to Claire first, and then to Caroline, and you know, 2 great mothers, and we brought up a lot of really beautiful kids together. So you know, but the marriages didn't work out, and those sorts of things happen, and unfortunately it happened to me twice. So it was kind of a double whammy. But they were great. They were great mothers, and they were great women, and you know, I kind of caused 1 or 2 problems for them as well. So you know, eventually we split up.
I met Claire. I didn't meet Caroline because Paul and Caroline don't talk. They don't communicate at the moment, and I didn't think it would make much sense asking her to contribute or to cooperate in the book for Paul. But I met Claire. I spent 5 hours with Claire and Paul down in Wexford one day, and she was hugely interesting and illuminating about their lives together.
Christopher is 25. He's the eldest. Mitchell would be 23. Then Jordan is tomorrow, I think it's 21. Then I have got Paul, who's 15, just 15, I should say. And then Ellis is 12. And then I've got a daughter, Danielle, who I don't really see, but she'd be 18.
I wanted to talk to the three eldest boys to get their views on the idea of a book, because the more I dug in the book, the more, I suppose, chaos that I uncovered.
Even to go to watch my sons, it might sound strange, but to go to watch my kids playing soccer, I would have had a couple of cans and stuff like that, even to stand on the sidelines. Because to be fair, I never really had a father myself who'd come and watch me play soccer, so I didn't really know the rules.
So I went to Claire's house in Manchester about 3 weeks before I finished the book, and I sat down with them for the evening and I spoke to them, and as you know, they're all quoted at the very end of the book. And they were so supportive and they were so keen that he told his story honestly. And that was the key to the book from my point of view. I felt that it had to be honest, and in some cases brutally honest.
I got a phone call from him, and he was supposed to have reported on the Sunday, and he didn't come in he didn't come in at all. And he said, I said, where are you? He said, I'm in Israel. I said, yeah, what? He said, I'm in Israel. He said, I came across with a lad that I knew, and we both went down to Cork, and we got on a flight, and we went out to Israel. And I said, he said, what I want to know is, can I come back? So I said, Paul, yeah, whatever you've done, you can come back.
Going to Italia 90 for me in particular, and I would have to speak for most of the lads, was the biggest footballing thing that could have happened in our careers. It's the biggest show on earth. It's it's every footballer's dream to go to a World Cup, and we've all of a sudden found ourselves at it. So it was the greatest thing that could have happened to Irish football.
For a couple of weeks in the summer of 1990, the Ireland soccer team held the nation in the palm of its hand. Everything in the country, it seemed, was focused on the World Cup and the exploits of the Irish team in Italy.
We got the draw against England. Again, you look at how good were England. Well, they got to the semi-finals, but that night in terrible conditions in Cagliari, they looked pretty beatable to me. We had that awful game against Egypt.
They hadn't read the script, and they played really, really well at the back. I was so impressed with them at the back. They defended brilliantly, and we could not break them down. They had one or two little runaway chances themselves, if we're going to be honest about it, and they could have... They never really looked like scoring, to be honest, but they defended brilliantly, like I say, and so they got a draw out of us again.
The third match then was against Holland, and this was the game that was going to decide everything, whether we were going home after that, or whether Ireland would be involved in the last 16, round of last 16.
It was just a lot. It was a hopeful kick out from Packy down the pitch, and I think it was I don't know, it was Tony Cascarino or something, just lumped it on. And fair play to Niall Quinn, because he never stopped running. He just ran towards the goalkeeper, towards him, and he spilled the ball, and Quinny, of course, puts it into the roof of the net, and then that was that. And then onto the pitch comes some information that England are beating Egypt. So if the scores remain the same, then we're both through.
The unforgettable match with Romania in Genoa. And again, it was a big performance by the Irish defence, much more so than in the other three matches, any of the other three matches. On reflection, on balance, we were fortunate enough to be on level terms at the end of the match, and again at the end of the extra time. And in the penalty shootout, we were looking down, I remember in the press box, wondering who'd take the penalties. And various people came up with, Kevin Sheedy would take one, and Houghton would probably take one, and maybe even Cascarino. But nobody in the press box said that Paul McGrath would take a penalty.
Even with it being Ireland, I still didn't want to take a penalty. I'm not a regular penalty taker, so I said no, I don't want to take one. And you know, the 5 lads who did shout, yeah, well, I'll have one. I thought, that's great. If you feel confident enough, the players who normally would feel confident would be the ones who are shouting, I'll take one. Because they know if they can hit a ball in between that space and it hits the back of the net, they're all heroes. You know what I mean? But I could have ballooned that anywhere, you know, and you know, if it had come down to me eventually, then of course I would have taken one, but I wouldn't have really felt that I had the bottle to take a penalty, and I just said, no way.
We were all sucked up in the euphoria of it. I'm never sure Paul got sucked up in the euphoria of it, because I'm never sure he gets sucked into the euphoria of anything. He has this kind of detachment, an emotional detachment from a lot that goes on in his life. And he was kind of becoming this world-class player. I mean, he was picked on the FIFA 11 from that tournament. When you think about that, he was basically a centre-half playing out of position, and he got picked on the FIFA team of the tournament, which is an extraordinary achievement for him. But if you'd say that to Paul, he'd say, I don't know where they came up with that. I mean, this would be his attitude to it. He became a very happy human being, I think, at Villa for a long time. Even if he was still dysfunctional, even if he was still drinking far too much, his natural athleticism, he was playing out of his skin. Supporters adored him. So when he won the PFA Player of the Year, voted for by your peers, you're the best footballer in the league, you bet your bottom dollar Paul McGrath was chuffed. But there was always an asterisk under Paul McGrath's happiness, and the asterisk was he had to go to the function.
The Italian game that we played in Giant Stadium in '94, I think, for me anyway, would have went down as one of my best games ever playing for Ireland. But I think a lot of the lads felt that because we had been beaten by them, obviously, in Rome to end our competition. So to start off a new World Cup campaign against them was a huge thing for all of us. So it was a magnificent occasion for us, and a great opportunity of turning them over, we thought. But we still had to beat them to do that, you know. And so, you know, when we went 1-up after a mistake by probably one of my heroes, Baresi, when he headed it in, and then Ray scores the goal. And suddenly I'm thinking, Ray, that's a bit early, you know. Why you couldn't have left it till the second half or something?
Baggio at the time was considered, you know, possibly the greatest player in the world. And, you know, Paul McGrath, you know, put him in his pocket and kept him there all day until the whistle was blown. You know, and that's the skill of the man.
And I've been in that many rehabs, like, you know, even recently in a rehab. And I've been in something like 13 or 14 of them now. And every time I go into them and I come out, people say, I wonder, I'm sure they're taking bets even. How long is it going to be? When's he going to go? Is he going to go? You know, but to me, the only thing I can do is, you know, go into the rehab, try and do it properly, come out and try and, you know, keep as well as I can for as long as I can. A lot of the time it's not that long. Sometimes I come out of a rehab and within weeks I'm drinking again. I put that down to you know, I've got a sociophobic, I'm a social phobic as well. It's not just a case that I'm an alcoholic. I don't really like crowds. Believe it or not, I don't like crowds. I played in front of a few of them, but I don't actually really appreciate crowds. I walk down Grafton Street, I can get panic attacks.
As we speak, Paul still has huge issues and huge problems, and my biggest dread as a journalist is getting a phone call someday to be told Paul has been found somewhere. My blood runs cold at the thought of it, but you know, I hate to say this, but until and unless Paul makes a decision himself to stop all forms of drinking, self-medication, everything, and does so on the basis that it's over for good, I don't know where this is headed.
And from 1993, I was, you know, taking tablets myself, self-medicating, as they say, and it wasn't a good thing. Didn't do my career any good, I don't think. But You know, and it's something that's kind of still carried on today, that's the worrying thing.
Paul always seems to me, there is a finite distance between himself and when he's going to drink again. It's never, I'm never going to drink again. It's always, well, I'm certainly not going to drink through Christmas or whatever. And I think in that there is a sense of denial, that he's still not really tackling this monster in his system. And I don't know what he should do, because I think the first thing he should do is get well and stay well.
Paul has so much goodwill here in this country. You know what I mean? That when you look around and you see so many people, I think, that really want to help Paul. And there are great opportunities, I feel, for Paul. But Paul is the one that's got to look at himself in the mirror and has got to really say to himself, I want to get out of this mess that I'm in. And I hope that he will do that, and that he can do that, and he does look at himself and wants to really help himself. Because if he wants to help himself, I believe there's an awful lot of people out there that want to really row in behind him.
I'd love to do something with kids teams and stuff like that. I genuinely would, because they're worth doing. It's worth doing. I'd love to pass on, you know, something to younger lads. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I'm doing nothing now. I'm just wasting away at the moment. So it's not a good place to be. And part of the reason I'm wasting away at the moment is obviously because I've got one or two things hanging over my head. So I can't just do that at the moment. But I would love to leave some sort of mark, you know, after things calm down and stuff, where you know, I do help out kids and I do show kids how to play a little bit better and stuff like that. And I've done that a few times, and to be honest, I've really enjoyed it.
The question often asked is, why do people, the Irish people in particular, love Paul McGrath? Because he's a lovable character. Paul would never do any harm on any person.